got me all sad, you know. I don't even know the guy. Like I don't think I've ever heard one of his songs, but this got me all sad. Thoughts on X? G, I knew nothing about the guy. Zero. I knew nothing about the guy. The only thing I know is because someone told me is that he was on grease. Like this guy he was on violence. If he needed to scrap someone, he'd scrap them. But and I think that's the person I was told of. I think it is. That's all I know. So I'm actually going to watch this one because I'm mad intrigued. The final 10 hours of 10. Again, I'm going to call him, yeah, everyone calls him X, innit? So I'm going to call him X. I'll call him X.
Around 15 minutes.
Alright, cool. Could you change the title of the video? Alright, calm. What about you, Ash? What were your thoughts on X? I literally know nothing. So this is me learning about it. I know it says the final 10.5 hours. This is me learning about his life, mate. I know nothing about this guy. Apart from that he makes music.
Minutes after this surveillance footage was recorded, XXXTentacion was shot and killed right at the front of this very same motorcycle store.
Several gunshots, possibly a drive-by. Witness advised a black Dodge Journey shot somebody in a black BMW.
Located within this mentioned black Dodge Journey were 4 individuals: Michael Boatwright, Trayvon Newsom, Robert Allen, and Dedrick Williams, the last 2 having been seen on the surveillance footage next to XXXTentacion just moments before the tragedy. Why were these 2 shady-looking guys snooping around the motorcycle store?
This guy's, he always on your wall. Crazy. Slyly, yeah. What am I trying to say? I don't like the fact that American GMs look so normal. Apart from the ones with face tattoos, very of them look like normal black guys to me. Like in the UK, I can tell a GM from a non-GM. Even like if they're not wearing like a bally or whatever, typical GM attire. But like the gang members in America, they all look like normal niggas to me, bro. But they're not.
In the minutes before his death. What was the motive behind the killing? Did the perpetrators know XXXTentacion personally? After being pronounced dead at 4:51 p.m. that very same afternoon, investigators would look over the prior 10.5 hours of Jazi Omfoy's life back to 6 a.m. that morning, at which point they discovered that
it's so true. No, it is. You're going to bed? Appreciate you for joining the stream, mate. Have a good night, mate. Have a good night.
his day started normally and that nothing was out of the ordinary.
Anyone out there is on it. Yeah. Do my thing. Or if just anyone can be a GM in America. They all look the same, bro. Like none of them look like them violent ones. You know what I mean? They just look like black guys. They're all on violence. It's weird. Why do they all look so friendly?
At 6:05 a.m. he'd begin the day with a game of League of Legends, before logging off 22 minutes later at 6:27 a.m. Now it's impossible to tell if he'd been playing the game all night, or if he'd simply gotten up early to have a quick match before getting the day started, but either way, beginning his final day with video games didn't exactly seem unusual, or indicate any awareness about the fate that was waiting for him that afternoon. However, X did seem to have a sneaking suspicion that he would eventually suffer a premature death. In an Instagram livestream from December 2017, 6 months prior, XXXTentacion discussed both the possibility of death, whilst outlining what he hoped his legacy might become when he did eventually die.
If I'm gonna die or ever be a sacrifice, I want to make sure that my life made at least 5 million kids happy, or they found some sort of answers or resolve in my life.
In the weeks and months that followed this Instagram livestream, X had both increased his security and vowed to never leave his house alone, which would be discussed by a friend and producer ZX Flow, who stated he did not travel alone. He never traveled alone. He knew that he has enemies, obviously. He would not go places alone. I know there were people who were very jealous and envious of him. He came from an area where not a lot of people make it out. XXXTentacion had grown up in Lord Hill, Florida, a suburban area which...
See, getting killed because of beef, whatever reason, is somewhat better. Not that it's good here, but somewhat better than being killed because someone's jealous of you. Like, that's crazy. You kill someone just because you're jealous. Like, that's crazy. But we'll see what really happened.
which in 2014 was ranked as the 8th most dangerous small city in America. And if we examine X's upbringing in the area, it's really no surprise that by his final day on Earth, he had certainly created some enemies.
Lauderhill is like the hood. Lauderhill is like...
So, okay, you grew up in the hood. Why, you're a fighter? You've been getting in a lot of fights?
Bro, I've been fighting since I was a kid.
What, he's always been throwing the hands or what?
I mean, I've been there plenty situations, like plenty fights.
After growing up in somewhat of a rough environment, with his mother being a stripper and his father partly a drug dealer, fighting people became a regular part of XXXTentacion's life, almost like a hobby. He'd be enrolled in the school choir during elementary school, where he began to develop his love for music, yet would be kicked out after punching another band member in the middle of a public performance.
Like, I was in choir, ended up getting kicked out while we was literally doing a performance because he kept touching me when we were singing.
Being kicked out of educational institutions for fighting became somewhat of a trend in X's life. After the school choir event, he'd then be expelled from Margate Middle School after kicking another kid in the mouth, whilst also getting into a fight with a random person who had provoked him on the bus ride home. As a result of X's short fuse in the 8th grade, his mother would kick him out of home, at which point he'd go and live with his grandmother, who lived in a gated community reputable for drug dealing and gang violence, a place where XXXTentacion would come to find even more enemies.
Bro, the mom shagged his life, man. I get naughty kids can give you stress. Oh, the mom was a stripper. She may not have been, you know, the best mother, but sending him to a place that you know has GMs and gangs and drugs and guns, especially for someone who fights, like, that's the worst thing you could have done.
In this area, X came into the possession of a firearm and began to take part in armed robberies, ultimately resulting in his first 9-month stint in a Florida juvenile detention center. While locked up, X would meet another individual by the name of Stokely Cleavon Goulbourne, who would later come to be known as Ski Mask the Slump God.
It was hard. We had to make it on our own. They kicked us out.
We met in jail.
Having come from the same county, X and Ski Mask decided that after leaving prison, they'd meet up to continue their life of crime together. However, after noticing that they both had a mutual interest in freestyle rapping, they would instead leave prison, purchase a blue snowball microphone, and enter a substantially safer business, music.
Yeah, we need an outlet to just stop getting in trouble. He ordered the stuff off of eBay. It was like a snowball mic, Audacity, and like a laptop.
XXXTentacion would create his first ever song alongside Ski Mask titled News/Flock, then post it to SoundCloud after his release from prison, with his second song Vice City discussing this desire to leave his life of crime in the past. From this point onwards, X would become so serious about his music career that over 4 years later, on the final day of his life, creating music was still very much a daily habit. Because at around 8 AM, approximately an hour and a half after logging off League of Legends at 6:27 AM, X would work on the beat for a new song recorded 2 days prior titled Chase Glass Shards, which would, unbeknownst to him at the time, be the last piece of music he ever worked on. This would continue over the next 6 hours between 8 AM and 2 PM, in the process interacting with his girlfriend Genesis, who had become sick and was considering seeing a doctor. Without the knowledge that after that afternoon, he'd never see Genesis ever again, X had...
You've got that mic. Hey. I hope you have no enemies, mate. I hope you have no enemies.
Something else on his mind, buying a new motorbike. At 3:11 PM, X would FaceTime his mother for 2 minutes, asking if she'd accompany him to a motorcycle dealership in Deerfield Beach, to which she would say no, sparking an argument, resulting in her agreeing to instead go to the doctor with Genesis. Vowing to never leave the house alone, XXXTentacion would instead head to the dealership with his step-uncle, stopping by the Bank of America on the way over. X pulled up to the bank driving his $150,000 BMW i8, whilst wearing a gold chain and a $2,000 Louis Vuitton bag. He walked in calmly and withdrew $50,000 in cash, placing each and every $100 bill neatly into his Louis Vuitton bag, at which point he'd be noticed by the 4 previously mentioned suspects, Michael Boatwright, Trayvon Newsom, Robert Allen, and Dedrick Williams, establishing a potential motive for the killing, financial gain. Just weeks prior to this $50,000 cash withdrawal, XXXTentacion had signed a deal for his 3rd studio album worth a reported $10 million.
Nah, you're taking the friendly route. Thank you for your own sake, man. I don't wanna. Gee, I've been saying it for a while now, but it's crazy the amount of people that I know that have to put RIP someone in their Snap stories is crazy. I'm so grateful. Like, I thank God that no one that I know like has been stabbed like that, or no one that I've known personally, you know what I mean, has been stabbed like that, or have died. All my guys are alive, and I'm grateful. The amount of people I see, they be like, oh, more life to me, RIP, whatever. Like, it's too common now. It's too common, especially growing up in South London.
US dollars. However, landing such a lucrative deal was no walk in the park. Continuing on from where we left off earlier, after releasing Vice City in 2014, rapping about his desire to leave his life of crime in the past, X continued to release music, yet failed to achieve any success in the beginning. Having no following whilst being fresh out of prison led X to take on a 9-to-5 day job, working as an over-the-phone electricity salesman.
I only done one job and I was a sales broker because I knew how to run my mouth. Electricity salesman. Hello, my name is Jose Onfoy from Energy Solutions. How are you doing today?
Around a year and a half later, on the 30th of December 2015, XXXTentacion would drop
word it is genuinely becoming the norm.
One of his now most infamous songs.
Got young kids dying, like 14-year-old, 15-year-old. That's crazy, bro.
Titled Look At Me. The track would come to be known as a sleeper hit, laying dormant for over a year before exploding in early 2017. However, in the process, X began to build a cult following of incredibly loyal supporters for his unique sound and style.
XXXTentacion. I wanted to ask you about him. Now he's still growing, and you know he's very young, and as every artist, you know, is growing. But when he speaks, you know, you can tell he's actually an intelligent individual. He's not a dumbass dude, and I think he actually has a message. So.
By early 2016, around 2 years after beginning his music career, he had achieved 18,500 followers on SoundCloud, yet had become one of the most highly requested rappers to be interviewed on Adam 22's No Jumper podcast.
Like, I have a cult fan base. I don't have like a weak ass fan base. Like,
you have a crazy ass following on social media and stuff, and like, it's not like necessarily the craziest like numbers, like 10,000 or whatever. Or how many are you on SoundCloud?
SoundCloud, I'm at 18.5.
Just the number of people who have asked me to interview you is insane. Like, considering you know that you're like an underground artist, like the number of tweets I had to read about you, man.
However, XXXTentacion was unable to stay out of trouble with the law, and only 3 months after the previously shown interview would be jailed once again for robbery and assault with a deadly weapon. After posting his bail set at $10,000, he'd be released. However, only 3 months after that, he'd be arrested once again after being accused of domestic violence against his girlfriend at the time. The interesting thing about rappers, however, is that criminal charges and prison sentences are often glorified by their fans and seem to do wonders for keeping them relevant. This is exactly what happened to XXXTentacion, as it would ironically be during this third stint in jail that his notoriety and music career would find its way into the mainstream. In January 2017, his song Look At Me, which had been released over 12 months prior, peaked at number 34 on the US Hot 100 Billboard after X had been locked up for 2 months and was doing absolutely.
I know any of these songs. Can't Stop the Feeling. Crazy. Man said it was 2 behind Can't Stop the Feeling. That's the one that can't stop the feeling in my body. It's that one, isn't it? That's crazy.
Nothing to promote it, while many of his other songs began to trend alongside it. His newly found notoriety whilst in prison led to countless 6-figure record label offers under the assumption that he was going to be even bigger after being released from prison. XXXTentacion ended up spending 6 months behind bars during this third stint and was released in April 2017 with more fame, more fans, and more enemies than ever. After receiving a deal worth an estimated $6 million for the production of his second studio album titled Question Mark, X would purchase a $1.4 million mansion in Parkland, Florida to house him, his girlfriend, and his mum. In the space of 1 year and 3 months, X had gone from an underground artist in prison to a multi-millionaire mainstream celebrity. However, while X had certainly built the fame and fortune, perhaps he didn't have enough time to build the high level of wisdom required to manage his high status position, bringing us back to the moment that he withdrew $50,000 cash on his very final day. The reasoning behind why X felt the need to carry such a large amount of money in physical $100 bills is anyone's best guess. Perhaps he knew the dealership would give him a better price if he paid with physical cash, or maybe he just wanted to feel like a baller walking around with the average American salary in his backpack. However, if X never made this withdrawal, the outcome at the end of the day might have been incredibly different. Because after leaving the bank, X would be followed by the 4 previously mentioned perpetrators to Riva Motorsports, all of which arriving at 3:30 PM approximately 10 minutes later. 2 of the alleged perpetrators, Robert Allen and Dedrick Williams, are seen walking right next to XXXTentacion whilst he looked at bikes, with the other 2 alleged perpetrators, Michael Boatwright and Trayvon Newsom, waiting outside in the black Dodge Journey. 25 minutes later, at 3:55 PM, XXXTentacion would go to drive out of the motorcycle dealership before the Dodge Journey would block the exit, at which point 2 masked men jumped out of the car and demanded X's Louis Vuitton bag and gold chain. The thieves would successfully take both of these items after a bit of a struggle. However, even though the robbery was over, when X looked at one of the men directly in the eyes, he'd take 2 steps back and do the unthinkable.
Rutabe, this is something that has really stunned fans of XXXTentacion, a rising star here in South Florida. Fans began to gather here right after learning about the...
It's got me all sad, you know. I don't even know the guy. Like, I I don't think I've ever heard one of his songs, but this got me all sad.
Shooting that claimed his life. They just held a moment of silence, but they've been here listening to his music, praying and lighting candles in his memory.
Disgustingly, in the hours after X's death, Dedrick Williams, one of the suspects, would record a video of himself happily dancing around with a bunch of $100 bills, also spending $800 on designer clothes at a Fort Lauderdale store the day after the killing. Similarly, police would find a $400 receipt for clothing and shoes in a garbage can at Michael Boatwright's house, purchased 13 days after X's death. However, while these complete and utter scumbags were living it up on their newly found unearned fortune, X's music career was having its own after-death explosion.
When he passed, bro, I went up 1 million followers. Anything that had to do with him went up.
I mean, yeah, it's weird to see like his Instagram followers doubled when he passed. He went from like 7 to 14. Like, it's just crazy to see how people react when somebody passes.
As mentioned in an article written by Hypebeast, sales of his first studio album 17 jumped up 9,000%, while his sophomore question mark project released back in March saw a staggering 41,306% spike in less than 24 hours after his tragic death. Similarly, his average monthly YouTube music viewership jumped from 150 million per month to 400 million per month following his death, giving him a permanent increase in the value of his music as an offset to his passing. It was kind of like karma, a superstition that X certainly believed in.
I believe in past lives and future lives. I believe in the karmic cycle. I believe until you align the karmic cycle, nothing else matters.
However, by the same token, after X had been to prison twice for armed robbery himself, perhaps his own death during an armed robbery was, as he put it, the karmic cycle realigning itself. However, no matter how poor X's prior decisions might have been, they weren't nearly as stupid as those involved in the killing. With bullet casings at the scene of the crime matching guns owned by the perpetrators, and evidence as obvious as Dedrick Williams purchasing a neoprene mask from the motorcycle store just minutes prior to the robbery, each of the 4 men were arrested one by one in the 2 months that followed the tragic event. The perpetrators would have their fingerprints taken and would each face a pre-examination. However, almost 4 years later, the men are still yet to face trial and have therefore received no charges. However, this hasn't stopped XXXTentacion's father, Dwayne Onfroy, from expressing what he hopes might happen to the perpetrators. Y'all killed that young man, that father, that son, that brother without a cause. I say this, no malice in my heart. I'm seeking life without parole for the participants in the robbery and cold-blooded murder of my son, and the man who pulled the trigger. I'm going to seek the death penalty.
Damn. This guy's dead as well. I thought he was alive.